Today I'd like to continue our journey through the book of Judges. We're in chapter 2 of that book, which talks about a lot of the kind of charismatic leaders that were raised up to help the Jewish people defeat some of the different Canaanite tribes. In chapter 2, we see that the Israelites are being routed by their enemies. And you might think, well, why is this happening? If God is on their side, if God is kind of protecting them and God is helping them in this new promised land, why is it that they're facing defeat? And of course, they faced the same question. And when they reflected on that question, they came to the belief that they were facing defeat because they had violated the covenant. They weren't being faithful to their God. Instead, they were experimenting with some of the Canaanite gods, the Baal, the Ashtaroth, this god and these goddesses. They were like attracted to them, and so they were kind of steering away from God at times. And it's interesting that when they stop following God, it seems like it has consequences in their life. They're not being faithful to God. They're not keeping the covenant law, and it has a destructive effect on their life. And it seems like during this period of the judges, the people would be kind of faithful for a while, and they would be very religious and very into their worship of God. But then when some of the judges died, they changed, and they went from this, very faithful, I will follow God, to this, well, maybe we could do some other things, and maybe this other God is more powerful, and this goddess seems to have a very attractive liturgy, we'll follow that. Um, and they start to worship these other gods and goddesses instead of being faithful to God. In chapter 3, we see similarly that the Israelites are living among the Canaanites, the Hittites, the Amorites, and the Perizzites. Perizzites means the uncalled cities. The Hivites also, and the Jebusites. And so there's these different tribes. They kind of all went under the general term Canaanites, but they have these specific names, and they were in different regions of Palestine. And when they are intermingling with these different tribes, naturally they intermarry. And so they take these different spouses, and we've seen very early in the book of Exodus and the book of Numbers and the book of Leviticus, we see all these prohibitions against intermarrying, and they seem to be really after the fact because there's a lot of intermarriage that is going on. And when they intermarry, they tend to be attracted to the gods and the goddesses of these different tribes. So God raises up at this point Othniel, who is the son of Caleb's younger brother, Kenaz. And he raises him up to free the Israelites from the king of Aram, who is Naharim. And Naharim, which means, Cushan of double evil, Cushan Rishatham. And he had conquered them. And he had made the people serve him for 8 years. So this king, Cushan Rishathaim, was very powerful, well respected, a good fighter. And so for 8 years, he had this conquest over some of the Israelites. And also, this could also refer to an invasion of the nomadic Edomites into the lands of Judah. So they would come as well into the land. So we had these different tribes who would come for a while and who would take over for a while and who would actually enslave the Israelites and take their land away and make them pay homage and tribute. And Othniel defeated the king, and he brought peace for 40 years. So that was a real nice chunk of time that there was peace in the land due to the efforts of Othniel. But then, as frequently happens, Othniel dies. So Eglon, the king of Moab, defeated the Israelites at Jericho. Jericho is often referred to in the book of Judges and other books in the Bible as the city of palms. And we have seen it very early on in the conquest of Canaan. We saw the battle at Jericho. So here is Eglon once again defeating the Israelites at Jericho. We saw originally where they were triumph, but now Eglon who comes and he defeats them. The Moabites and the Ammonites were tribes from the north. And here they are both in alliance with the Amalekites who are from the south. So a lot of times against the Israelites, there would be these different tribes, and they would say, well, let's form together and let's see if we can defeat the Israelites, take over their land, make them pay tribute. And Eglon was in power for 18 years. So we have Othniel, things are good, 40 years. We have the other king, Cushan-Rishathaim, who was in power for 8 years. So there's these different powers going back and forth who control the situation for a while. And again, it wouldn't be all of Israel. It would be certain lands where they would be very powerful and where they would be under control. So Ehud, from the tribe of Benjamin, who was left-handed, and of course, when someone was left-handed, it was kind of considered a curse. Right hand was always, the preferred hand, and if you were left-handed, it was mentioned, and that was not a good thing. And so Ehud made himself a two-edged dagger, and it was a foot long, so sizable, and he wore it under his clothes. And Ehud was responsible for bringing the tribute from the Israelites to Eglon. So that was his job, to bring them the tribute, so that if he put the tribute, things would be okay. If he didn't bring the tribute, forget about it. It's going to be a problem. So we gave him the tribute, and then he came back. After we gave him the tribute, he said, can I talk to you in private? So when they were alone, Ehud killed Eglon with his dagger, and he locked the doors to the room. Eglon's servants grew suspicious, though, because the doors were locked for a long time, and they said, this is, quite unusual. And they went in, they found their master dead. Ehud then led the Israelites against Moab, and they killed 10,000 men and conquered Moab. And they had control of the land for 80 years. Now, how accurate are all these figures? Everybody asks, well, was it really 10,000 men? Was it really 80 years? And again, these are stories. Certainly it was for a long time. And Ehud was considered to be a great judge, a great warrior. He had accomplished a great thing in defeating Eglon and ending the rule, which was a long rule, of the Moabites.